sure everyone else has pointed out, and as you know, haute couture is the haute, the top of everything to do with fashion. It is a luxury. Thank God it exists. Thank heavens there are customers to support it, because it is the ultimate top of everything to do with the making of clothes, the designing of them, the use of the most beautiful fabrics, the most beautiful buttons, the most beautiful threads, embroideries. I mean, thank heavens it exists, because it's sort of like a top for everyone to enjoy, even through fantasy.
Paris, the seat of haute couture for the past 130 years, and just as beautiful as the days when fashionable ladies flocked to the House of Worth on Rue de la Paix. Today, there are 22 couture houses in Paris, each creating women's fashion on a strictly made-to-measure basis for their clients. This is the time-honored tradition of haute couture, the creation of fashionable garments by hand with little regard for labor or materials costs. Indeed, the clients of couture spend several thousands of dollars for a simple day dress or suit, and as much as $100,000 for an embroidered evening gown. The designers of these costly creations, the couturiers, are each master craftsmen, as the art of haute couture takes many years to learn and then perfect. Emmanuel Ungaro, a true Byronic figure in fashion today, passionate, darkly romantic. He is celebrated for his magnificently feminine draped dresses. Yves Saint Laurent is acknowledged as one of the world's greatest fashion designers. For 28 years, he has been a bright star of the haute couture. Valentino was discovered by Jackie Onassis in the early 1960s and has since made millions with his classic, elegant clothing. Karl Lagerfeld, outrageous, outspoken, and exceptionally talented, he is the celebrated couturier of the House of Chanel. And Christian Lacroix, the youngest of the great designers. He has revitalized the House of Patou and is called the hope of the couture. These men are considered major personalities in haute couture by their peers. When they show their collections, as they do twice a year for the press, the fashion world, including their clients, are always at attention. But in the light of mass-produced clothing and an influx of ambitious ready-to-wear designers, what is the real significance of haute couture today? Is the fact that it produces the world's most luxurious clothes its only reason for being?
That's a question I often think about, especially when I'm sitting at the couture. And I think there are a couple of reasons for it to exist. One is quality of design. I mean, that phrase that you always hear about the couture is the laboratory of fashion. I'm not sure that's an accurate kind of phrase, but it tells you about quality of thought. And another is quality of make, quality in everything, in the fabric, in the making, in the craft. At certain moments in the couture this past season, I think one was really taken by the craft. At Ungaro, which was rather remarkable dressmaking, you were taken by the craft. I mean, to be able to do that, and we're not discussing the thought of what was, the design idea, discussing this, the ability to be able to make it. And if you're lucky, if the season is good, you get both those things at the same, together.
The couturier is often thought of as an artist working with a very specific medium, not clay, oil, or metal, but fabric. And rather than be looked at to be appreciated, his creations are meant to be worn, albeit by the privileged few.
couture is where the creation is born. And season after season, I'm building. Not just a collection. I'm building my style. I'm building my life. You have to work 25 years, 20 years to make a collection. It's not just you decide to start the 10th of June to be ready the 25th of July. There's all the movements of your soul, the movements of your heart, the movement of your thinking, influencing that magic moment when you are in front of the canvas. It's like a writer facing the white page. And that moment, I'm full of dreams. You arrive here in the morning, very early, 8:30. And I take the wood mannequin, I take the toile, and I try. And I drape. I have my scissors, I have my pins. I know how to cut, I know how to sew, I know that. And I'm trying to build a new story, a new vocabulary. Try to find richer words. I try to dream. I need models to work with. I need people around me. I need the fabric. I put the color together, and you know, I'm suffering. I'm very happy, and I'm very unhappy. I do crazy things, and then I destroy them because I'm not happy with it. I'm afraid it's too much. Then I'm afraid it's too few. To make a collection is full of doute, you know. It is a permanent insecurity, permanent. And it's very difficult to be happy with. And you have to be foolish to be happy. Because the moment you're too happy, it's finished. Creation is a moment very, very special, tense, megalomaniac, egocentric. You are insupportable. You're not friendly. You're not familiar. You became at that moment someone that people hate. But you have to do it.
While it is reported by the Chambre Syndicale, the Association for the Couturiers, that there are 3,000 clients of Haute Couture, some of the best houses estimate much less. Who are these privileged few? The women lucky enough to wear the world's most expensive clothes?
For the very, very few people who, not just who can afford, but who have the exigence of going in a couture house and order a couture dress or couture suit or coat. It is an exigence to yourself, not just a problem of possibility, financial possibility. Because they had not just the education, but the habit and the education of going in a couture house and being received by the directrice, which normally is a beautiful woman, who try to make things easy for the clients. And they are received, and they are the fitting room, and the choice of the dress, and the choice of the color, the choice of the material, and so on. It is a rite.
You know, sometimes you put a dress and really you feel the world is yours, you know. And sometimes you feel very done. It's very important. I think it's like washing your hair, you know, for a woman, you know, you feel very, very, you say, no, well, I feel depressed, so I'm going to wash my hair, put a dress, I feel well, I'll walk in the room and you feel, you know. Of course, I mean, that's very important. For example, I mean, for that blue dress. It's wrong, but one feels it like a... It's very pretentious to say, but in that dress I feel like a queen. I can't tell you. Just it fits, it gives me strength. That's it. It gives me strength, and I walk with it like if I walk with it, and my mother walked with it, and my grandmother walked with it. You know, it's like if it was my robe.
First of all, here comes this Chanel box. It's a beautiful box. It's the most beautiful box. It's made of the most wonderful cardboard. It has the most beautiful lettering. It is the most ravishing tissue paper you've ever seen in your life when you open it up. And all the ribbons and the way it's done. But it's such pleasure. You feel so pampered. And then when you wear the suit, you feel very pampered.
And the way it's done is such perfection. I mean, you just need lots of time, inspiration also. And the first idea is that you are different. And you feel different, and it's like having a second skin. Brings you something to your personality, to your self-confidence, I guess.
The made-to-order dress is yours, and it isn't anybody else's, because it follows your body perfectly. By and large, it is made so wonderfully that you could wear it inside out. The seams are beautiful. The dress has been created and made on your body. It's a bore to have to fit it. I mean, after you're well known enough in a house, you don't have to fit it anymore because they have your mannequin, they get it going. But nevertheless, it's your dress, and there's a terrific difference with the way it feels on you.
And I don't think there is a word to express it. Maybe the others could find it. I can't express. And it's not the value so much as it is the security it gives you and the comfort that you have in it. And it all fits. And it also, you know, couture dresses can adjust your body a little bit. In that if you're, you know, if you have wider hips, they can make you look narrow. If you have big bosoms, they make you look smaller. So all that gives a tremendous security to a woman. And when you walk into a room in a beautiful couture dress that you know is perfect on you, you feel the world is your oyster. I mean, it's a tremendous thrill.
Edith Baudoux is an anthropologist at the Sorbonne in Paris, where she has been teaching since 1968. For the past several years, she has been making a study of fashion and Western societies, which will result in a book on the subject.
The need to show that you have achieved something is always something that is gratifying to a person. But I think even perhaps more than that, the desire perhaps to show or to show off is the intimate pleasure you feel by having something you really like. You can take a couture dress and turn it inside out, which apparently a lot of clients do. And it's as beautiful inside as outside, or so it is said. And I guess having leather upholstery handmade in your designer car is also a pleasure. It's nicer to sit in or to touch. So I think that talking about pleasure for these very special things, I think, is as important as talking about status symbol or achievement or showing off.
No one can deny the creativity and skill of the couturiers, or the high standards of quality that are kept at the better couture salons. Nor can one deny that haute couture is incredibly expensive. There are many well-to-do women who buy the better ready-to-wear, or pret-a-porter as it is known in France, but do not or cannot pay the price of couture.
I buy pret-a-porter more often. I would prefer to be able to buy haute couture because it's one of a kind, or you don't see yourself coming and going, and they're beautifully made.
If you can afford it, of course. The men do spend a lot of money on cars. We do, on clothes. Why not?
I prefer the pret-a-porter because it's not so much expensive, and we can have many blouses for the price of one in haute couture. We can have 4 or 5 in pret-a-porter.
I think for the woman to be well dressed, to have something very special, it's such a pleasure. You can compare. For me, you can't compare.
The majority of women in the world, however, who read Vogue and are aware of fashion, do not have a great deal of money to spend on clothes. They certainly cannot afford haute couture or even the better pret-a-porter. What does haute couture mean to them? And are they even aware that it exists?
I think the reader certainly is aware of what it is, and I think that everyone has a certain curiosity as to what is maybe the best, or what is even suggested in the couture. I think that as time has gone on, the reader brings to those pages slightly different kinds of interests. I mean, 30 years ago, it might have been our skirts short, or there are waistlines in, or whatever would seem to have been a thing. And now I think with everyone being a little bit more sophisticated, I think, about clothes, I think they then bring a different kind of interest, just the general interest of what's going on in the place that's supposed to be doing the most rarefied and best. What does it suggest possibly is going to happen in fashion? I think in the end that's what it brings. Or does it suggest anything? Again, the answer is there either way.
The prime medium of communication for the couture is newspapers and fashion magazines, although television has been doing an increasing share of reporting too. And as only a few hundred people are lucky enough to get an invitation to a Paris or Rome showing, the rest of the world must experience haute couture through the pages of their favorite fashion magazines.
I would say, for people having the education to be able to see through a magazine or newspapers or television what is the sophistication and the refinement and the real perfection of a couture collection. But you need some education, I must say. It's like if people have never been in a museum, and how many people have you seen telling in front of Picasso, oh, my young boy would be able to make that. If you have no education, the same problem. The couture is a problem of métier, as you said beautifully. It's a métier. It's a master of work. It is another education, another approach in fashion. We have been at the beginning, we are at the beginning. And let me say some words from a writer, French writer, Antonin Artaud, who said, life is undefendable if you are not at the origin of things. And for me, couture is where the origin is.
When looking at the history of haute couture, one realizes how much influence it played on fashion. Worth, for instance, began his career by following the accepted dress shape of the day, a voluminous look requiring layers of petticoats. But he soon was inspired to modify the silhouette, and by 1868, the bustle was in and the crinoline was out. The fact that fashion could be an inspiration of an individual was a rich legacy that Worth left in Paris. And soon after his death, names like Poiret, Vionnet, Dior made their imprint on what women wore. Each decade brought with it not only a different look, but a new star for the couture. Elsa Schiaparelli rose to fame in the late 1920s with daring, often downright outrageous designs. She brought whimsy to the couture, something that was never there before. Jacques Fath was exactly the opposite. He designed beautiful, wearable, functional clothes that better typify the era, the late 30s and 40s. Balenciaga's career was a long one, extending from the 30s to the late 60s. He was considered one of couture's great masters, a creative genius, and a magnificent craftsman. His dresses were beautifully, sometimes extravagantly constructed, and always appreciated by the fashion critics of the day. But of all the couturiers, perhaps Christian Dior best epitomized the fact that fashion reflects the times. His new look emerged at the end of World War II, at a moment when women were looking to emerge themselves. His collections continually stopped fashion presses, and although his career was brief, his name has great historical significance in the world of fashion. Courrèges was to the 60s what Dior was to the 40s. Miniskirts, hip huggers, short white boots. It was a strong, architectural mod look, and almost everybody wore it. Like other important looks, it was perfect for its time. That it was so enthusiastically embraced proves this without a doubt. Yves Saint Laurent has been an important name in fashion since 1958, when he created his first collection for Dior after Christian Dior's death. It was a resounding success for the 21-year-old designer and the start of an impressive career. 28 years of Saint Laurent's work premiered at the Musée de la Mode, the fashion museum of the Louvre, in the spring of 1986. When it opened, it stimulated a charged controversy as to whether or not haute couture could actually be considered a fine art.
It's not haute couture who has an art. It's some couturiers who are artists, like Balenciaga, Chanel, Dior, Vionnet. But haute couture is not an art. That depends on the man or the woman who make clothes. They are really artists. The style is the most important thing. And when the couturier has a style, perhaps he is an artist. Why not?
Well, as a museum curator, I would certainly answer that the haute couture is art, because in this museum we have a huge collection of textiles and dresses and clothes of every kind, from the 4th century up to our times. And obviously all the things around me are belonging to, let us say, the following of this collection. The question for me would be a little bit different. This is contemporary art. These dresses have been made in the 20 last years. And it would be more important to ask ourselves if these dresses are considered by our contemporaries as part of contemporary art, like, for instance, a painting by Andy Warhol. Do they belong to the same world? On my point of view, the answer is very clear. There is no difference between a beautiful dress of the 18th century and a dress by Yves Saint Laurent, exactly as there is no difference between a painting by Poussin and a painting by Andy Warhol.
Whether one is of the belief that haute couture is art or craft, it is difficult not to appreciate the scope of Monsieur Saint Laurent's work or his high degree of dedication. For although Saint Laurent has achieved great financial success with his ready-to-wear, he acknowledges that haute couture is his first love.
I can remember Yves Saint Laurent saying to me once when he first got into ready-to-wear in a very big way, and this probably must have been maybe the late 60s, the early 70s, and it was as though the couture was going to blow away. Do you know what I mean? It was going to go. And having a conversation with him once, and when he was saying just this terrible regret that the couture was going to disappear, and that he was going to keep on making couture clothes and keep on making couture collections, even though it cost a fortune and was a money-losing thing, just to keep the métier alive, to keep those workers going, that he would be the last to do it. And I mean, there was no reason to dispute him. This was really the feeling at the time. Then all of a sudden, it got a whole new wind. More money, people more confident about showing money, I think. I mean, you know, all of these things, because what happens in clothing really reflects what goes on in the world in general. And the interest in workmanship of it and the appreciation of it just gave it this whole new blast.
Today, the couturier works in much the same way as the couturier of 25 years ago, 50 years ago. Although fashion changes, fabrics, fabrications, embroidery are still handmade by time-honored traditional methods.
First of all, I mean, when you start a collection, the first thing to do is to choose the material. The supplier, they come to see me. I am looking all the solid color. Sometimes I change the texture if I want much heavier or much lighter. Second one, all the print. If it's a summer collection, I am choosing all the print. And I ask for new design just for myself. I give ideas of flowers, of disposition, coloring and everything. When the material, they are close to me, one by one, I start to drawing and thinking about my new line. And I cannot tell you which is the feeling. It's very difficult, you know, because the feeling, I think, is coming from my pencil, and you go on, and it's coming in the paper, and this is the creation.
The creation of a collection differs from house to house. Not all couturiers, for instance, begin with a sketch. Ungaro creates directly with a toile or canvas. Later, the toile will be carefully interpreted into a pattern, and the pattern into a finished garment. When a client comes into the couture house, she too will be fitted with a canvas, then a paper pattern made before a piece of material is cut. Surprisingly, the workers at the ateliers of the great couture houses are not old women. The small hands, as the seamstresses are known, more often than not are young women, pleased to work at a craft that is challenging and creative.
I think there is a fascination for handmade things because most things are mass-produced, from armchairs to anything, clothes, and perhaps even wear and throw away, you know, or use and throw away. Who has any hand-embroidered handkerchiefs? You buy your box of Kleenex. And it's more pleasure, it's more rarefied perhaps, and it's a throwback to perhaps more genteel times when people took the time to do things and to get pleasure from things and not just use and discard. There's another thing I think you have to think about. Handmade things are more of a status symbol now perhaps because labor is much more expensive than it used to be. Before you had perhaps 4 or 5 servants in your home if you were of some wealth. And now you don't. And before, doing things by hand, embroidering handkerchiefs or anything, was just the ordinary day-to-day thing for more, let's say, bourgeois or nobility families. And now it's really very difficult to get. So it's more expensive and fewer persons have it, so it's more precious in a way.
Another very challenging craft is embroidery. And almost all of the couturiers frequent the house of Monsieur Lesage to have custom embroidery handmade for their creations. Embroidery is a craft all its own. It demands skill, creativity, and an enormous amount of handwork. First, the sketch is made. Then the materials to be appliqued have to be decided on. This is done by Monsieur Lesage personally, as he oversees every step of production in this very busy workroom. Embroidery is a rich addition to any garment. A rich look, as well as a considerable cost. And although one might think the cost is due to the materials used, it is actually due almost entirely to labor.
I can take the example of that crocodile. That crocodile takes around 700 hours. It means that you may have about 200,000 stitches, because every time you have one bead, you have one stitch. For your information, the labor cost us, just the hand labor and the social charge cost us about 150 francs. It means that we must sell the embroidery around 350 to 400 francs an hour, because we have to calculate that we spend 20,000 hours of work in sampling. To answer to your question, for instance, we sell that to Saint Laurent, 150,000 francs, which is about $20,000. And he sell that for $40,000.
$40,000 for a vest makes embroidery the single most expensive element in the making of a couture original. Yet couturiers like Saint Laurent continue to commission Monsieur Lesage to fabricate extraordinary designs for an appreciative clientele. But embroidery is not the only costly outside handwork that a couturier will utilize. Handmade flowers and featherwork often grace couture collections as well. Just as the name Lesage is synonymous with embroidery, the family Lemarié has been associated with handmade flowers and fabulous feathered applications for over 100 years. At their workshop, feathered boas are specially ordered for the couture houses, as are the beautiful camellias made exclusively for Chanel, since Coco Chanel herself gave the house her first order. Other important suppliers to the couturiers include fabric makers, button makers, jewelry makers, and also manufacturers of various accessories like hats, shoes, belts, etc., unless the house is large enough to manufacture its own. Here at Chanel, accessories like chains and buttons play an important role in the character of many garments. Indeed, chains are one of the Chanel signatures that Karl Lagerfeld has continued to use in designing the Chanel Couture collections. Coco Chanel was, without question, one of fashion's greatest ladies. She was a true revolutionary, and her designs, predating the feminist movement by a good 40 years, did a great deal to free women of the shackles of fashion.
Yeah, sure, because in her youth she wasn't that classic, you know. She did lots of different things and make lots of different looks. It's only in her last year that she insisted heavily on doing the same thing and never changed again. But before it was changed all the time. It had nothing to do what she did in the 20s with what she did in the 30s and so on. So really, that's not the problem, huh? When she was old, then she thought this was it and nothing should be changed anymore. But in her youth, she was very different from that. Huh? She made very funny and quite eccentric things also. It was not that classic then. That is an idea what turned up later, and I hate that. It kills things.
Monte Carlo, one of Europe's most famous playgrounds for the rich, is home for Karl Lagerfeld. Lagerfeld has often been called the bad boy of fashion, in the same breath with fashion genius. Born of a wealthy German family, he grew up in a privileged atmosphere with nursemaids, tutors, and a great deal of 18th century furniture. Indeed, apart from fashion, he is quite taken with architecture as well as decor, and he has not lost his love for the 18th century. This villa in Monte Carlo is to be one of 3 residences that Lagerfeld will maintain in this small principality alone. Like many Lagerfeld homes, it too will be decorated in the style of the 18th century, at a cost for renovation and finishing estimated at $8 million. But Karl has a penchant for kitsch as well, and an addiction to pop art, as evidenced by his often photographed Memphis apartment, also in Monte Carlo.
I don't know if it's like it's the best, but it's the quietest. This is the only place where I can prepare all my different collection without being disturbed too much by the telephone. Of course, a little by the telephone, but nobody can come over in 5 minutes and say, please come over, we have a problem, and so on. So here I'm quiet. It's far away from Rome, Paris, New York, and everything. So it's perfect. Mm-hmm. And I love the place, I must tell you. Yeah, if not, I would not have more than one house in the place. And really, I come very often. When I go from Rome to Paris, I pass through Monte Carlo. When I go from Paris to Rome, I pass through Monte Carlo. And I come also only to work quietly and to be here, you know, because life is very pleasant here. Huh?
The epitome of the jet-setting, extravagant, outrageous, wonderfully creative designer, Karl Lagerfeld is admired by many people in all walks of life. He has not only been designing couture and ready-to-wear for Chanel since 1983, he has also designed for a number of other houses, including his own label. Lagerfeld's talent for fashion extends to furs as well, and the world-renowned Fendis have relied on his design talent for over 20 years.
We were looking for a helper, and we found a young man who has since become the greatest of them all. We understood each other immediately, wonderfully. Now our relationship has been going on for more than 20 years, and our ideas always go together perfectly with his ideas.
Furs have always played an enormous role in fashion. Through the centuries, they first adorned kings, and then haute couture collections. But from time immemorial, fur has been worked in a very traditional way. It wasn't until Lagerfeld started to work with the Fendi sisters that fur was transformed into something else. It became a fabric for designers, rather than an object unto itself.
Oh, I just think Karl is a creator beyond any way I couldn't put it into words. The man can take fur and make it so living. Put on a Fendi coat, first of all, glorious, extravagant furs tend to make one feel very kept and warm and delicious and sexy. But Karl's furs are that. They're sexy and they're extraordinary.
I played with furs like I play with materials. I forgot about the craft, even if I know about the craft. I said, this, you can put it together the way you want. but you can do it with material too. So I treated fur like material, and that made the change, and in a way, it's pretentious to say it, but Fendi, it's not my name, so I can say it, changed the way fur is made today in the world.
Furs, fashion, accessories. Whatever he has undertaken, he has triumphed. But indeed, his greatest triumph is bringing the House of Chanel back to haute couture fame. For this has significantly increased the marketing power of this prestigious label. And as a result, the Chanel fragrances, and for that matter all products bearing the Chanel name, are now enjoying greater popularity in the marketplace.
And of course, couture is important for an image today because you need a couture house to make a fragrance. And also, it helps a lot for licensing. People who are not at all important anymore, and I don't give you any names, as fashion influencers, they are around for 20 years. They have shows during the January and July period when there is no ready-to-wear. They would never have one little article in the papers during the ready-to-wear show when there is much more creativity. But for a household name to sell something else, that helps a lot. And in fact, they use couture very often only to try to sell whatever they can sell, from soups to shoes, from whatever it is. I mean, jewelry, whatever. I mean, this is another business, but for that, couture helps a lot because it's like a kind of window you can show in 1,000 places instead of one window you show only in one street, you see. That's what it's used for.
No one can deny the importance of the individual signature and the prestige that haute couture has generated. It's a reputation that has a strong foundation, one built years ago when haute couture was the undisputed dictator of fashion. In the 40s and 50s, names like Dior, Chanel, Balenciaga, Patou made newspaper headlines. Their prestige was so indelible that today still they exude greatness. They're the names of the greatest perfumes ever made, and the names behind many billions of dollars of licensing contracts. Contracts for products that literally range from soup to nuts. Although few women can afford the haute couture original, millions of women can buy the name in one way or another.
You know, when you go to an art gallery or to a museum, you are not obliged to buy your Picasso. And it's very expensive. And you accept the fact that Picasso or another painter, it's an artist, it's very expensive one. And it's like that. For me, fashion's the same. And haute couture is like painting, nothing else. And you know, we're exactly like painters. That means, for instance, we have, as you know, what we call licenses. That means dye, shoes, and the painter, and particularly painters in the 20th century, such as Picasso, Miro, Chagall, and Dali, created their own license. That means lithography, etchings, reproduction, etc. It's the same. For me, it's exactly the same.
One of the first houses to realize that there was a fortune to be made in licensing was Christian Dior. They were the first to departmentalize in the 1950s, dividing the house into many houses, each with its own design staff. Of course, there is still the couture under the direction of Marc Bohan since 1960. But there is also Christian Dior shoes, hats, babywear, gifts, and furs, each with its own chief designer and staff. This has not only helped to perpetuate the great name of Dior, but has also permitted the development of many Dior products. Products that were directly owned by the company, like Christian Dior furs. Dior is the only couture fur house in Paris producing their own furs, and it's one of the most prestigious fur salons worldwide.
Every year we have to improve in our business, doing things different and having better figures too. Because you know, I'm a creator, but I'm a director too. of the department. So we have to make the other department more important every year. So we start, now we are doing the haute fourrure, which is on with fittings. But I'm in charge too of the ready-to-wear fourrure first, to try to make coats more accessible of the woman.
Today, most couture houses exist on the fortunes they make each year in licensing their name. This has helped turn the fashion industry into one of the world's largest big businesses.
But then, you see, the couturier found the way to make it pay. And couture has become like the locomotive which pulls all the other industries. By putting their name on a product, as you know, a designer can become a multimillionaire. And a man like Cardin, I think, has his name on 800 licenses, you understand, including pots and pans. So it's not just a question of selling a few dresses. The minute you are an acknowledged leader of fashion, then you become a multimillionaire. That's another difference too, because in those days, the men were nice men who lived well, you know, the designers, but now they've become the new tycoons.
Even the greatest advocates of haute couture admit that ready-to-wear, or pret-à-porter, has revolutionized fashion in the last 30 years. If haute couture can be considered the fashion explosion at the turn of this century, ready-to-wear was the big boom in the latter half.
Well, I tell you, in my career, the biggest change has been to move from the world of couture into the world of ready-to-wear. When I started, couture was like, you know, this terribly elegant institution which gave directions for all over the world. You had dressmaker buying the patterns, and you had every woman rushing around to see what Dior did. But now, you see, the world has exploded, and this has become an industry for billions of people. So in a way, the ready-to-wear people are more important and more creative because they appeal to a much broader sensitivity. It's no longer a question of a few dozen women in a salon. It's the world, you see. And it's Asia, and it's Africa. I mean, when I mean the world.
No one, not even the couturiers themselves, most of whom also have ready-to-wear collections, can deny the significance of ready-to-wear. But to them, and many, many others, it still doesn't diminish the importance of the couture workrooms. For these are the laboratories of fashion, the only workrooms in the world where unlimited resources are available in the spirit of a creation. Haute couture gives the designers free rein for their ideas.
Well, I think couture now has become a very exclusive club. It is still a place for very talented designers to experiment with no amount of money sort of set in advance. Like, you know, ready-to-wear has its obligations. When you have to cut thousands and thousands of garments, you have to consider cost. Whereas couture is still a laboratory of ideas that these designers now can afford because they have developed parallel industries.
However, one Parisian couturier, the youngest of one of the great houses, believes that couture is more than just a means to perpetuate a craft or a prestigious vehicle used merely to sell other products. He believes that couture is not only alive and well in its own right, but also on the verge of regaining its former glory.
I believe that haute couture has regained the position it had 20 or 30 years ago. The great era of haute couture, the era of Dior and the arrival of Saint Laurent. It's true that haute couture was becoming an old lady, a little old-fashioned, very conservative, very boring. After the arrival of designers like Mugler and Montana, all the creative energy was being invested in pret-à-porter. Today, I believe the reverse phenomenon is occurring. We have young stylists as well as young clients. People who are between 18 and 30 years old have developed a new interest in haute couture. I know that there are many young stylists who are coming out of school, who want to work in couture, who have a great interest in couture, Well, 5 or 6 years ago, they would have rather gone to Mugler, Montana, or other prêt-à-porter designers. Also, the clients are younger. There are many 18-year-old girls who 5 years ago would have never thought of dressing up in couture to go out dancing. They have discovered the Salon of Haute Couture, either here or elsewhere.
For the past few seasons, Lacroix has been called the wonder boy of Paris. He seems to have done what others, perhaps with the exception of Lagerfeld, have failed to do. And that's to give new vitality to couture. In fact, his collections have been creating downright sensations. They say it's been years since the couture has been a stage for such outrageous collections. And as a result, the critics love him, adore him, and literally shower him with roses.
I was really crazy about him, because I was going to say this was so fascinating to me that he's not in ready-to-wear at all, that they're doing that he's really only working on couture at the moment. I feel that there was a master plan there somewhere, which they're not revealing. There may be none, but I feel there is. But how wonderful, you know, Karl, he was at one time very. I think Christian said that Lagerfeld was very encouraging to him. And one time I said to Karl, you know, Karl, I'm fascinated with this fellow's clothes. They're very theatrical, and I know they can't sell but to just a very few people, but the fact that Patou, forget that they must have tons of money, but that they want to go through this exercise, it is so exciting for the couture. And Karl said he is the hope of the couture.
From the outrageous to the sublime, Haute Couture, born just 100 years ago and still very much alive. Born of a time when almost everything was made by hand, and yet still existing in our mass-produced society.
In my grandmother's day, people had time to spend putting themselves together because their life was run by other people for them. I mean, they gave orders and everything happened, and they had the time. Women had time to be more womanly. Today, we're all emancipated and free and liberated, and we have jobs, and we do as many things as we can, but I don't think that makes us any less feminine, and it doesn't make us want to dress any less well. I think one still wants to be as appealing as possible to oneself, to one's friends, and to the men in one's life, because after all, plumage is for attraction. And if a really marvelously dressed woman comes into a room, there isn't a man in the place who doesn't look. And I think we all secretly inside of us want to create that effect every time we move.
The ability to dream, and the necessity of having something to dream about. This seems to be vital to human existence, and as a result, an essential element of haute couture.
But you know, for people who are not very rich, couture dresses are a dream like Harry Winston Stone's. Huh? And that's already important, because dream is needed. Huh? If not, the daily life could be a little difficult. And it helps a lot of people to show a name, to make it known, and to sell something else. Good, okay, because what they sell had nothing to do with fashion, but lots of people work it in. So in a way, it's also important for other kinds of business who have nothing to do with it. It's the way it's now, something typical for the late 80s and perhaps the 70s and 80s and for the last years of the century. And it's very different from what it used to be, because the world changed and couture changed too, but it is still the reason to exist because tons of people live from it.
I think the dream is very important for people, because apparently people who have everything get, you know, quite despaired. People who don't have anything also. But I think it's an incentive, and you have to desire something or someone in order to get something out of life, you have to have your imagination running, because otherwise it's just too boring, I think. And if dreams are too expensive or too far away, you try perhaps to get a little bit of it by buying Porsche glasses, sunglasses, or by buying a perfume that has a couturier signature on it. And I think that's the way you achieve a little part of it.
And the dream is just as important for the couturier as it is for the clients, or the women who dream about being clients, or the men who dream about being with beautiful women in couture gowns.
The main word is seduction, seduction and seduction. Who doesn't want to seduce other people? Who? And I'm obsessed by that, by seduction, by sensuality. That both things are really at the head of my thinking when I'm working, even with my relation with people, myself. I'm working like I am, no difference. I want to use even the chair. It's why the effect I want to have on women is that, you know, they have to think that they cannot live without that dress. They have to have it. Because the moment she'll have it on hers, you know, she will be not just another woman, she will be more herself. You know, if she doesn't lie to herself, she tries to be just the woman she is.
Haute Couture, alive and well in the latter part of the 20th century, the perpetuator of many time-honored crafts, the laboratory for new ideas, the locomotive that pulls the train, the signature that sells a multitude of auxiliary products, the prestige behind ready-to-wear, and a dream for millions. The fashion show is the culmination of the couturier's work, the showcase for their collections. Twice a year, clients and the fashion press are caught up in a frenzy of Fashion Week, and the preparations behind each show are intense. Usually, there is very little time to accomplish a myriad of details. The couturier himself is totally involved with the final fitting of each garment and the accessorizing of an entire collection.
And that's it. Day of the rehearsal, I am looking again on the girl, one by one, what's going on, putting together the hats, the shoes, the jewelry and everything. And when the rehearsal is done, everything is over, it's the day of the show.
Indeed, they are like Broadway shows, for the atmosphere and excitement generated on stage is as much a part of showing a collection as the clothes themselves. The production behind a major fashion show is also an outstanding spectacle with countless details happening simultaneously. Hundreds and hundreds of people, models, fitters, makeup artists, hairstylists, and somehow all orchestrated by one man, the couturier. It's here at the fashion show that one realizes what the word glamour really means, and one understands the charisma and the importance of this special kind of celebrity.
when you have quite a big name, fashion, and you know that people, they expecting from you good collection, and you are an international name, I mean, you do whatever you want to do. I mean, you are not concerned what the other they are doing. You do what is your feeling.